Everyone. It is good to have you here again, and welcome to the first edition of a new live series we'll be having titled "How Do I Do X?" So we are going to use this as an opportunity to answer some of the most common questions that we have been getting from the communities, and it's really nice to finally start this. I hope you had a good week, and your week has been great so far. And I'm very sure that this demo is just going to add to the rhythm of your week and make things so much better because we'll be taking a lot of the common questions we have gotten from Discord, from the community forums, and from Intercom. We'll be answering them live so you get to see how to fix these common issues that you may face when building your own applications. So that's a quick overview of what we'll be doing here. My name is Confident, as you can see from my title, and I also have Vihar with me. Hello, Vihar.
Hey, conference. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm feeling great.
How is the weather like over there?
It's kind of a bit hot, but manageable, so it's fine.
All right. It's also really hot here. I was imagining we should be having Hamatan a cold period now, but here it's really hot and we are just trying to enjoy the
Right,
weather while it's still hot. And
right.
if you're just joining, please feel free to say hello in the chat. We would love to meet you. Also, tell us where you are joining in from. Would love to know
Right.
about
I
you.
can go first on that. As you can see, I am Vihar and I am joining from India, from Andhra Pradesh. And right now I am on IST time zone. And I think conference is on EST. I'm not sure.
WAT, West Africa.
Got it. Got it.
Yes. It's 6 p.m. right now from where I'm joining. What's the time over there, Viha?
It's around 10:30 p.m. in the night.
Wow, 10:30. that's that's cool. We have Rochester joining from Brazil. Hello, Rochester. How are you doing? I'm sure you have said fine where you are right now. So really nice to meet you. So if you're just joining, please feel free to say hello in the chat. We would love to meet you. And as you do that, I think we can get started, Viha.
All right. All right. So as Confidence had mentioned, today we'll be doing the How Do I X uh, event. So the idea is basically to summarize all the frequent questions that we see on Discord, Discourse, or Intercom and stuff. So before I begin with answering all the questions, I would like to thank my A4's team, especially Dancia and Pranav, who had been really active on our all channels and helping out people to build their apps with applications. So they had actually helped us to curate all these questions that we will be showing and solving now. So big shout out to them before I begin with. All right. So let me quickly share my screen.
As you do that, we have Alexandros joining us from Greece. Hello, Alexandros.
All right. I think you
How are you
can
doing
see my
today?
screen, Confidence.
Yes, I can. Yes.
All right, great. Without any further delay, I think we can get started. So as you can see, I'm not using any slides and all. I am using Appsmith as my own presentation platform, and I have gathered some of the most asked questions, some of the most exciting questions that you can solve on Appsmith. And then I'll get started with the first one. So let's see the first one. I don't know. I haven't mentioned who asked these questions, but we see these questions a lot on our Discord and other platforms. All right. So how to combine different queries and return the selected combined result to a table? Let me break down this question. So say if you have two APIs or two queries on AppSmith, and say if you want to merge them or combine them both and then display onto a table, you can do it very easily on AppSmith. So let me give you the scenario of what I'm using here. So I am using the default database that is available on AppSmith, which is Postgres. Even you can also play with that. All you need to do is just click on this queries icon, and then you can select new data source, and then here you can see sample data set databases if you want to play with or test anything on AppSmith. So I have built two queries out of this user table to solve the first question, which is basically combining two different queries and putting them onto a table widget. So let me show you the two queries that I'll be combining and putting that on the table right now. So if you see here on my left, I have a name email query, and this statement, it basically selects the ID, name, email from the user table that I already have. and I am just listing out all the 100 users that are there on my database. And or like you can just run your queries by using this run button on your top right, and then you can see the response beneath. And I also did my second query from the same database. Since I'm not using any custom databases, I had to create the two queries on the same data set, but the real scenario comes from two different data sources or two different APIs. You can feel the code that I'll be showing you will work on both of these things. So in this query, I am selecting only gender. The idea is to basically show all these elements: name, email, gender, and the ID onto a single table. Now let's see how we can combine these two queries and put it on a table widget. So basics, I think you are pretty aware of how to drag and drop a table widget onto Appsmith. So you can just navigate to widgets and then simply find the table widget and bring that onto your canvas. And first thing, the way you bind it is you can directly use the query here and then do dot data to bind any query. But then here, since my goal is to combine two queries, I have written a simple apps function inside the table data. So the table data is a property for the table which binds the data onto this table widget. So here the idea is to basically use the two queries and put them back onto this table widget. So here let us decode what this function does. So I have a simple variable, combine data, and then first I have gender query, which is the first query I have just shown you, which basically filters down all the genders. And then I'm writing a map function on top of it. And if you can see, I'm using the iterator, the item as my iterator. And inside my map function, I am again defining a new variable called user. So the user is basically uh, giving fetching all the details from the name email query. And if you can see, I am using an identifier just to match the rows inside the two table. For example, say if you have ID 352 on this query, and then if you have a different ID, it won't make sense for us to combine that two rows. So we'll have to use a specific identifier to make sure that both the rows on both on the different tables match. So that's the reason why I'm using an identifier on my second inside my map. Right, now let's go back to the function. And then here, if you can see, we are finding the item and then we are putting back the same item using the spread operation on Appsmith. So in this return statement, we are entering all the objects from the item variable, which is basically the first from the first map function, and the second is from the user. So in that way, you can see from the two queries, you can see the evaluated value here. I have the gender, name, email, and all combined together on one table widget. So this is how you can simply combine any two queries, three queries, basically multiple queries onto any widget. You can put it on a list widget, you can put it on a text widget. In case if you are not aware of how to do this, there is a shortcut on Appsmith which you can always use. Just go to this quick search and navigation. You have this very cool thing called use snippets. Just search for what you want. So here my scenario is to merge multiple queries in a table. You can always find the code, copy this code, and then replace the variables with your queries. So it's that simple to combine two queries and then bind it onto a widget on Appsmith. All right. So moving on to the second question, how to populate list widget from database. This is a pretty straightforward question, but I'm gonna anyway walk you through it. So first things first, you will need to drag and drop a list widget onto the canvas, and next you can see the properties again here. Similar to how you do it on table, you'll do it on the list widget. So you have this query, name, email query, the same query that I've just shown you, and then you first bind the entire data onto the list widget. So list contains two basic things. One is your primary list, which holds all your items, and next individual items which are there on the list. So if you can see, the list widget basically accepts an array of values, and each item inside your array will be linked with one list item. So first you'll need to bind the entire data. And now in order to access each item on your array, you'll need to use the property called the current item. So the current item, if you can see, the evaluated value is basically the name because I am actually selecting my name. So let me go back to my list widget. So here I have ID, name, and email, and I'm using the current item property to bind an individual text widget there. So if I say current item dot name, it gives me the name and it iterates on the every list item here. And there's an another cool property that you can use. Say in case if you want to display anything from the list, you can use the selected item property. Say for example, if you have bunch of statistics on a list widget and want to populate them onto a stat box widget, uh, you can use the selected item property. If at all you can, if you can see my screen here, and then you have this selected item property that I'm accessing from the list one. So the list one here correspond to my list here, and then the selected item property is basically what I've selected. So if you can see, if I select the second item, the name automatically updates there. So this happens because of the selected item property. So all you need to remember is two things. One is the current item to bind individual items onto a list widget, and then the second selected item to access that particular item from the list widget.
Quick
Right.
question, Biha.
Yeah.
So is it possible to access the index of an item in a list?
Yeah. So you can use current item dot index. So I think
Or actually meant while displaying data on the list itself. So where you are pulling in data and displaying the name and the ID, so it's also
mhm.
possible to access the index of the item right there.
Cool. Let me just quickly bring in a new text widget onto my list and see if I can find the index there. So
Okay.
I have just dragged and dropped a new text widget, and I'm gonna say uh, current item dot. Okay, so the email gives me the email here, and then
I think I
what's
saw current index right now.
okay.
No, I mean before you typed current item, I think I saw
All right, all
current.
right, all right.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So you can use this property to bind your index from your query. All right, so I think the index will be basically the length here. So you can use the current index property to bring in the index here.
All
All
right,
right, any
cool.
other questions, conference, before I move into the other one?
Not yet, but we have a question from David. I think we
Mhm.
can take that question when we're done with the ones we have on the screen. So we can take more questions and we'll answer the question from David.
Cool. So the next question is an interesting one. So it's basically toggle API using button using store value. So let me break down this question. So
Sorry,
say,
sorry, sorry, Viha. We have a question on the lists widget.
Mhm.
So, is it possible to access a JavaScript file or a JS object from a list widget?
Yes, you can do that in case if you want to have add any customization. One thing to remember while you're using Appsmith is you can use JavaScript anywhere across the platform. All you need to do is just use the mustache bindings and then write your custom logic on top of that.
All right, thank you.
All right. So moving on, the next question is toggle API using button using store value. So the idea is basically to update the table, uh, the query that's on the table while clicking on a button. I'll give you a quick demo of how this works. So right now it's showing name, email, the two queries that are from the name email query. But if I say show gender, it'll update and then give me back give me back a different query. So you can toggle the data basically using, I mean, toggle the APIs from the button click. Now let me explain you how you can do that on Appsmith. So right now, if you see, I'll quickly show how this works. So if you click on button widget here and go to the on click property, this is the magic I'm doing. So store value is a function on Appsmith to store local values. Any variable you can store it on your local Appsmith store. So in this case, I created a new variable called flag and I'm assigning it to one. While on the other button widget, I am updating the same variable, which is flag, to 0. And then I'm calling this function from JS objects called switch API. So let me go back and show you what's happening here. So here the flag value is 0 if I click this. And then the flag value will be 1 if I click this. So let's see what's happening inside the switch API function from the JavaScript objects, JS objects. So let me go to my utils JS object and see what's happening in the switch API. So it says if the flag is one, then return gender data dot query. Else, I mean, if the flag is anything else apart from one, which in our case is zero, basically, we set it to name email query. So this is a simple hack that you can do on Appsmith, but alternatively, you can actually run queries inside your JS objects as well. For that, you can use gender query dot run in case if you want to run your entire query, but all I'm doing here is just putting the data that is already there from my query. So this is a simple hack to just toggle your data on the table widget. All you need to do is like use the local Appsmith variable and then put it on your bind it with a function using the JS objects. Alternatively, you can always write inline functions, but the best practices are to organize your code under JS objects file. So in that way, when your code gets heavier, you can always go back and change things. All right.
Yeah.
So that's with the third question. Now I'll be moving on to the fourth one. So change where clause based on the select widget. So this is quite similar to what we have discussed back on toggling the API, but instead we are using a select widget here. So in our case, I have three scenarios. One is users, which will show me the users values. The other is gender, which will only show me the gender value. Right. I think yeah, the other is all, which will show me all the values. I think there is a bit delay on this, but I'll quickly walk you through how this works. Uh, yeah, I think I've mismatched the queries on select, but let's see what's happening here. So if you can see on my select widget, I have manually hard coded my three options. One is users, one is gender, and the last one is all. Okay, I think there's a delay while running the query, but it works fine. Cool. So the idea is to basically show all the values when all is selected, only gender values when gender is selected, and users value when users is selected. Now let's see what we are doing on the table widget. All right. So on my table data, I have something called dynamic query, uh, and then I am binding the data from the dynamic query. But let's see what's inside the dynamic query. So here is my dynamic query. What I'm doing is I've simply replace the where this the identifier using the Appsmith mustache bindings. So it says select, and this will be a variable, and from this is like the basic SQL syntax. But let's see what's happening inside this value. It says appsmith.store.tablefilter. So let's see where this data is being populated. Now if you go back to select widget, so basically if you can observe, the data refreshes when you select any particular item on the select widget. So you have a property called on option change. So here I'm using this dynamic query.js. I'm just calling this function from my JS object. It's called dynamic query. So I'm saying if select one dot selected option value is equals to users, and then I'm changing that particular dynamic variable to this thing. So it basically brings me all the name, email, and ID. And if the selected value is gender, I am bringing in name, gender, and ID. And if my select or else if we select all, it gives me uh, all the values from the query. So see, the idea is simple. We are setting this table filter. So this is a local variable on Appsmith. We are setting it to the string that we are passing in from the JS object, and this particular value is being dynamically used. I mean, we are dynamically changing it using the mustache syntax. Uh, so if you can see the evaluated value, it says select star because the local variable is set to star. But if you can go back and change it to a different one, say if I change it to only gender here, now let's go back to dynamic query, and then now you can see select name and gender. So in this way, you can dynamically bind values using the mustache syntax. Right, conference, you have any questions for me?
Uh, Someone asked, is it possible to have an infinite scrolling list using the list widget?
I don't think so, but I don't think if at all you are using an infinite list, your browser automatically crashes. But this is all paginated just to make sure your list is organized. But you can increase the height of your list widget to show the number of items you want. Alternatively, you can decrease the height of the item in case if you want to like show more items on your list widget. And in case if you increase the list height, the list continues. I mean, you can like add it to how much ever you are comfortable with. But the idea is to basically make sure that your data is not affecting your browser performance. So that's why we paginate and then bind it onto list widget.
Yes. Yes, cool. Someone was asking, is it possible to zoom in a bit?
All right, I think I can do that. Is this fine, confidence? Is this fine now? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I think this should be better. Yeah, I think this should be
All right.
better.
All
Please
right.
let us know if you can see this now.
All right. The thing is, I can see the all new, Appsmith UI. It's really awesome, but it's taking me a bit time to, get used to it. I can see all my queries being, highlighted with the logos next to it. So it's even new to me. But fine. I think I can manage that.
Yeah, I think I really like this new
Right.
design. It's
Right.
it's really
It
clean and it gets out of the way, especially when you want to get things done.
correct.
Uh,
Correct. Previously, I used to confuse where my Postgres query is, where my
oh yeah,
MongoDB,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. I
now
was just going to say that. Yeah, I was just going to say
yes.
that. This looks so much more better.
All right, I'll go with the next one. Uh, so navigate to when I need to route to the same page through a button, but with different query param. So this is also a pretty straightforward answer. So all you need to do is you'll need to use the navigate to function, and then the first parameter is basically to which page you want to navigate to, and the second parameter is basically your query params. So if you see, I am using my same page. So the question is basically to route to the same page. So I have updated my page to page one. You can see your page details on top left of your sidebar. Alternatively, you can also click this settings button where you can organize all your page properties. But going back to the question, so on the navigate to function, I am using the same page one, and then I am sending the key params here. So I'm using the value for. Now see the magic. I This is my Appsmith editor URL, but on click you can see this updated param. So within two single steps you can send any query params. All you need to do is navigate to function and then the query parameters in your second param. So let me update this value. I'll say, hey, let's see if this works. Yeah, you can see that
Yeah,
automatically
okay.
update as soon as I click that.
Yeah.
All right.
And a quick question: how does one read data that has been um, sent through query params?
Right. So you can do that using Appsmith. I'll actually show you that. So let
Okay.
me add in a text widget. Even it's been a while since I've tested it, but I think I can do it. Or else,
Okay. Cool. Cool. Let's give it a try.
yeah, Appsmith dot URL dot periparams uh,
Okay.
dot
Yeah.
key. Thanks to autocomplete, made my life much easier.
Yes. Yes. That's really cool. Sometimes I kind of forget what syntax to use or where some functions are, the names of some functions, and the autocomplete actually really helps. So I think it's a
Right.
really cool feature.
Right. Right. All right. So that's with redirecting to query params. All right. I'll finish with this thing, and after that, maybe conference. Do you wanna chime in and take over
All
after
right.
me giving the sixth one, or do you want to take over now?
Uh, okay. So let me take over after you're done with this.
All right. Cool. Let's see what this is. Switch between tabs by using button clicks and control tab visibility. All right. I have First of all, thanks to conference before I explain this because he made a really good video that's on our Discord, and I think most of the people take that as the reference whenever they encounter problems with tab widget. Even I had to check his reference for that. All right, so let's go back and see how to solve this thing. So the idea is very simple. I have just dragged and drop a new button widget onto my tab, and if you can see, uh, I am using I have created a local variable, one more local variable called tag flag. So, and I'm storing this value called tab2. So similarly, on my tab2 I have a button, and then on click I am saving this flag called tab1. So now, uh, like whenever the buttons are clicked, we save this tab1, tab2 on the alternative tabs. But let's see what happens in the tab1 widget itself. So if you can see, there is this default tab property. This basically sets the default tab. So here what I've done is I've updated this to the local variable that I have just created using the store value function. So here the evaluated value is tab 2 because I've clicked the tab 1 button, and that's the reason why your default tab is tab 2. And now if I click this particular variable which is on my Appsmith store turns back to tab 1. So that's the reason your default tab will be back set to your tab 1. And within a single click you can navigate between multiple tabs. Say you have like some 5 6 tabs, you can simply manipulate that with local store. Alternatively, you can also navigate between pages, and inside pages you can also select the tab you wanted to land in. For example, I've created a page here. You can see this page 2, and then there are two tabs, tab 1 and tab 2. Let me select tab 1 here, and here I am using the query params thing, which I've just showed you. So from the query params I'm taking the tab parameter. Now let's see if the query param gets updated and then puts me back on tab 2. Let's see how this works. Let me go back to my page 1. All right. All right. So inside my navigate to page 2 and tab 2, here I am navigating to page 2 using navigate to function. And then I am sending a query param with the key as param and tab 2 as my value. So with this, basically from the query parameter, the default tab gets set. So as when I click this, if you remember back then, I have selected tab 1. Now after I click this, it should show up tab 2. Now let me see if this works. So here you can see on my query parameter, so this %20 is basically the space. So on my query parameter, I have got my tab 2, and then it automatically navigated to tab 2. So that's how it works. And with that being said, I'm gonna give it to Confidence, and then he can take over the next questions.
All right. So I think I'm quickly going to take this question from Catalog Edit. The question reads, can we have in each tab the same reference of a table and update the data when we click on the tabs? If I understand you, you want to read data in multiple, you want to read data from the same table into multiple tabs and then update that data based on the inputs you have on each tab. Yes, it's possible. So you can bind data from the table widgets into each tab using the widget name accessor. So it's going to be table one dot selected row dot whatever column you want to access. And then whenever you want to make an update, you can also pass data using store value or probably directly running an API call using the inputs that you have configured in the tab. So I hope this answers your question. Yes, it's possible to do this. So I'm going to share my screen and then we would continue with the other questions. All right, so I think you can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen.
All right. So the seventh question is about running statements in sequence, and this is very handy, especially when you want to do multiple things in an exact order, or you want to call multiple APIs in an exact order, or use data from a previous API call in the next API call on a button click. So we have a simple button right here, and when you click on this button, it does three things. The first thing it does is that it shows a message. It then goes to make an API call. And then when the response is fetched back, it shows another message. So we're just going to click on the button and we'll take a look at how this works shortly. So I'm going to click on the button and we should start seeing the messages right now. All right, so you can see that we have the messages showing up here after the button has been clicked. My computer is a little bit slow right now, so things
Yeah, I
might.
think the third pop-up just showed up.
Yeah, yeah, it just came in. So let's take a look at what is going on. By the way, this button is calling the fetch with callback function. So we have a JS file called utils, and there's a function inside of it called fetch with callback. So let us take a look at what we have right there. So I'm going to scroll down and expand this a bit. All right. So I think you can see this. This is the
Yeah.
fetch with callback function. And exactly how we wanted things to be executed is what is specified in this function. So the first thing we wanted to run is to show a message saying that we're going to be running this function, and then we go to run the API call, which is the fetch movies.run. And when that is successful, we go again to show a message to the user that we have successfully completed running the API, and we can go in to do more things. So this is how easy it is for you to chain calls. And lastly, you have the alert that shows after the fetch is successful. But there's an even easier way to do things now. You have the ability to write promises in Appsmith. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that. So let's say um, fetch with callback to, and this is going to be a function. We can do things like the first thing I want to do is return this show alert right here. And this is going to return a promise. So I can go to do a dot then. And after that, I can go to call the fetch movies API. So this is going to be fetch movies.run. I'm just going to copy this. And then we can go in to add another chain into the execution sequence. Last thing I want to do here is show the response from the previous call, show the length of the response from the previous call. So this is going to be dot then. And in this callback, I can access the data returned from the previous call, which is the fetch movies call. So this is going to be the response. And what I'm going to do here is show a message using data returned from the response. And lastly, I can do the last show alert we have here on the next line. So we can add one more chain here. So this is going to be dot then. And last thing we need to do here is show the last message. So this is another way of achieving exactly the same behavior as we did while using callbacks. So this is with using promises. So I should probably rename this function to fetch with promises because we have promises and we are adding more to the chain and doing more stuff with the data that is returned. So you can use promises easily in Appsmith, and that also includes using async await as well. All right, so that's for the seventh question. So let's head back and see what we have on the eighth question.
All right, adding to confidence, I think there's a really great documentation on our docs. You
Oh,
can go to docs.appsmith.com and just search for async, or just search for running queries in series, and you'll find some really cool examples that we have written down there.
yes, yes. I'm just going to get the link real quick and um, send it to the chat so that everyone can take a look at it. All right, so JavaScript promises, and I'm pasting this in the chat. So this gives a pretty good idea of what you can do using promises in Appsmith. You can call multiple APIs in a particular sequence and use the data returned from one step in the next step. You can also use the async await. I think this is my favorite feature when it comes to promises. I really love this. And we've also worked on a video on how you can make use of this. So stay tuned and you would have access to that shortly. All right, so I have the link sent to the chat so you can take a look at it whenever you can. So moving
But
on to,
we have one question conference. It's
okay.
from S. It says, can we have on VS Code the colors of the brackets in the JS editor? It's like basically VS Code theme on the JS editor.
Uh, that is something we would be rolling out shortly. So there's this extension on VS Code called colorizer that swaps the color of each closing bracket to make things more readable. So I think that's an enhancement we would be adding when we touch again on the JS editor. It's a really good idea. It makes things really readable. So I think we should also work on that. That's something we are going to definitely work on.
Yeah, but our saying that our JS editor is also super powerful. You can have all the evaluated values, you can have all the linting, you can have all the debugging experience. I mean, whatever you have in VS Code, you'll have the same experience apart from the colors and the syntax highlightation, that the theming part that you have mentioned.
Yes, yes. And we'll be adding the theme in shortly, so stay tuned. All right, so let's head back to the eighth question. And the question goes this way. How do you dynamically add widgets um, on your application? For example, you might need multiple input widgets. How do you dynamically add these inputs? So there are two ways to do this, and the first is a really hacky way of doing it. There's a better way coming up, and I'll talk about it shortly after showing you the first method of doing it. So you have the list widget right here. So this is a list widget. I think you can see this. We have the list widget here, and inside of the list widget, we have an input widget. So you can see we have an input widget here. What we can do to dynamically add more inputs to this list is provide more items in an arbitrary array to the list, and that would dynamically generate more items in the list. So I'm just going to show you something, for example, before we take a look at the code that makes this work. So I'm just going to cut all of this out because this is the logic that makes it work dynamically. So if I want a single input in this list, I'm just going to provide an array containing one item. So we have an array containing one item, and you can see we have just one input in the list. If we want to add more inputs to the list, we need to provide an array having number of elements that match the number of inputs we want in the list. So right now I have two elements in the list, and you can see we have two inputs in the list. So that's basically how you can actually work your way through creating dynamic inputs. So what I have right here, I'm just going to put back the code that we had. So what I have right here is that I have two buttons. I have an add button and I have a subtract button. Whenever we click on the add button, let's take a look at what we have going on. So whenever we click on the add button, we are storing a value to the store in the key of number of inputs, or num inputs for short. And all we are doing here is that we are incrementing whatever is stored in that key. So we are taking a look at what is previously stored there, and we're just adding one to it. We're using the number constructor here to make sure that it's whatever we're storing is a number, because on the first run it's going to be undefined. So we want to convert undefined to a number and then add one to it. So same thing also goes for the minus button here. All we are doing is that we are removing one from the number that is currently stored. And when we click on the button, for example, so I'm just going to click on the plus button. My computer is really slow. Okay, now it's showing up. We have four items right now on the list. So what happens is that whenever we store a new item to the store, we increment the number of inputs we have in the store, we read that number from the store using the appsmith.store.number of inputs, which is the key. We read that value from the store, and we generate an array based on the value coming from the store. That's basically all we're doing. So we're just generating an array, and the length of that array would determine how many inputs we have shown on the list. So we can go reduce this. I'm going to reduce this to 2 inputs by clicking on the minus button, and we should see that we have this reduced to 2. All right, so we have just 2 inputs showing up right here. So that's how easy it is to dynamically add widgets. I mentioned that this is the hacking method. So there's a much better way of doing this, and that's using the JSON form widget or the form builder widget. I don't have it here. It's not live yet. It's currently being tested. I think I can get a deploy preview link and send it to the chat so that we can all take a look at that. Take a look at it. So what you do for that widget is that you give it a JSON structure of inputs to render, and it is smart enough to take the structure, render the inputs, and it's so much easier than having to dynamically generate arrays on the list widget. So I'm going to search for the deploy preview, or Vihar can also help with that and share that on the chat so that you can go take a
I've
look at it.
just shared the link where Abhishek had gave a demo on how to work with JSON forms. It will be releasing soon, but in case if you are excited and want to check how it works, you can uh, view the video that I've just shared on the chat.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's a question from Alexandros. I'm just going to spotlight it. And the question is, can we set widgets to update without flickering? Yes, and this is a really good question because we have had this concern from a couple of friends using the app. So one way to do that is by disabling animations. I'm just going to bring in an input widget real quick. So we have an input widget here. Oh, I can search for it. So this is input. We have the input widget here. Okay, this is taking some time. All right, and I'm just going to show you the property you should look out for. I think it's actually available on all widgets. So I'm using the input widget as an example. If you do not want the flickering or loading animation, you can actually disable this using the animate loading toggle. You can turn this off for widgets you do not want to animate or flicker when loading, and those widgets would not flicker. So it's actually something available on all widgets, and you can take a look at any widget you want to turn that off for and disable this. You can also write some JavaScript to evaluate or dynamically set when you want the widget to show animation or not. So you have the ability to do this. Is there any question that we may have missed?
I don't think so. There's a question on the date range. What I think we are already having that on the list. Maybe we can take that while we are showing that.
All right. Yes. We'll be taking the date range shortly. All right. So moving on to the other widgets we have here, or the other questions we have here rather. Um, this is on adding points to a counter or increasing the value of a counter. And this is something that you may want to do, especially if you are building something dynamic or you're building something that may have some gaming elements to it. So we have an input here. This is an input widget, a number input widget, and we have 2 buttons to the side. This is the plus button, and we have the minus button over here, and we have the plus button right here. And what we have on the widget is that we are actually reading the value displayed on the widget from the store. So we have a key in the store called value. We are reading the value of the number displayed on the widget from the store. So whenever we want to go to change or update the value of what is displayed on this input, all we need to do is increment the value saved in the store. It's very similar to what we did for the list widget, creating dynamic inputs using the list widget. Very similar. So what we're doing here is that we are incrementing the value on the text from the text. Rather, we are grabbing the value from the text right here, we're grabbing the value from the text, we're converting it to a number using pass int, and then we're adding one to it and saving that in the store using a key of value, which actually sounds confusing, but that's exactly what we're doing right here. And if you go to increment this, so I'm just going to show you that it works. So I'm going to click the button a couple of times. You can see that we have three showing up now, and we can go increment this one more time, and we would have four showing up. So you are basically manipulating the widget stored in the Appsmith store and reading that value into the input widget. So that's how easy it is to increment the counter or build something that have some gamish elements to it. All right, so we have the 10th question here.
All right, before you begin that conference, so there is this question: is there a widget where we can set a range of date start to end? So basically, setting, choosing from a particular date range. I think you
Yes,
can answer that on this same question here.
yes, yes. So this is on the date picker. Just going to highlight that. And we kind of get this question a lot. How do you set a date range on the date picker? So it's really easy to do. The date picker has a min date and a max date property. So you have the min date, which sets the minimum date that can be selected, and you have a max date, which sets the maximum date that can be selected. And you can easily either supply hard-coded values, like for the min date property we have right here, we have a hard-coded value that you can keep picking dates back to the year 1920. So this is hard-coded. This is written in text. Um, you also have the option to write JavaScript. So you can use the moment library for this. This is especially useful if you want users to only be able to select from a date range of probably a week. So you can use the moment library. This is the moment library. And we are creating a date object using the moment library by invoking it. And then we are going on to add 10 days to the date that has been created. And if you take a look at what we have right here in the evaluated pane, you can see that this is exactly 10 days from now. And if you take a look at the dates widget, you can see that we can only pick 10 days into the future. So we have from today, and then 10 days into the future from the 3rd to the 13th, which is exactly 10 days. So you can easily do that using the moment library. And same also goes for the main date. You can similarly go in to write JavaScript or use the moment library to generate a date range for the date picker widget. I hope that answers your question. All right.
I think we are only left with one question. Should we just finish that and come back to the questions on the
Okay.
chat?
Okay. Okay. So let's do that. The last question here is to check the validity of an input. So there are two ways to do this. The first is a really hard way, but it's also really powerful, and that is using regular expression. So you have regex right here. You can write a pattern for the regex you want evaluated, and that will be used to validate the input widget. So it's really powerful. You can write regex, but I find regex to be very hard. How about you, Viha?
Sorry, I was answering a question on the chat. Can
Oh,
you
okay.
repeat that again?
Are you very good at regex?
No, I am not that good, but I can manage.
All right. I usually find myself Googling around whenever I want to do anything using regex. But there's actually an easier way to do it, and that's using JavaScript. So there's this valid field, which allows you to evaluate the validity of an input based on JavaScript. I think I actually prefer this because it's easier for me to think about and easier to write, and easier to read also. So right here we have a simple JavaScript expression that would only that will only validate the inputs to the input widget if the text entered is true. So if I enter anything that is not the text true, it's just going to return false. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to say something, and you can see that this says it's an invalid input. If I go back to enter false, still invalid. But the moment I type in the text true, you'd see that we would have the validation passing. So this is true. Okay, I think I need to give this some time because my computer is really slow.
No, you'll have to write JSON there, like a real key value pair.
Okay.
Okay, if you click the text widget, so the question is basically to validate JSON, and if you click on the text widget, it'll actually parse, and if that parsing is successful, it will return true, and that true will be again checking back on the input widget, or else we'll end up in a cyclic dependency because all these are like controlled widgets. So that's the
Oh,
reason
okay.
I had to use that hack there.
Oh, okay, 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 okay. That means I didn't get this. But I tried typing in true and that worked at some point.
Right. So I think can you like write a JSON here, like a key and a value?
Okay, so what would I use for the key?
uh, I mean, you just write your flower braces and just add a string key and colon value. Yeah, A1.
Okay, so let's see.
Maybe can you add A in the string? Also one in a string, and then check
Okay,
that out.
let's see if that works. Okay, yes,
Yes,
that's
yes.
true.
Right. So in case if that's a JSON, it'll validate it as true, or else it'll just show up as false.
Okay, 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 cool, cool. All right, so that's how to validate JSON using JavaScript in Appsmith. And the entire logic for doing that is right here in the text widget. So we have the logic for doing it. It's going to try to pass whatever is imputed, and if it works, it returns true to let you know that that's a valid JSON. If trying to pass that widget fails, it's going to say it's not a valid JSON. So that's
And
how
that
we have this.
condition, we are again using that in the valid property on the input widget.
All right, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I think that was what I missed earlier. Yeah, you're right. All
Got it.
right.
Let's answer some questions. Um, okay, we have answered the flicking one. The undo thing is done. So we have a question from Daniel. Says the page reloaded and it doesn't seem to be backing out changes. Any idea how to fix?
Can you highlight that question because I can't
Yeah,
find it?
I just did.
Okay, David. The page reloaded and it doesn't seem to be backing out changes. Any idea how to fix this? Um, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean on your editor? If it's on your editor and you have the save check mark, so can you see where my cursor is? Yes. So if you have the save check mark checked, it means whatever changes you have made on your editor is actually synced and stored. So that when you perform a reload, you would have whatever changes you've made come back to the editor. But if there's an issue with your connectivity and the changes you have made were not saved, you should see a warning icon here to let you know that the new changes you are making are not saved. Then whenever you reload, you may lose those changes. So just make sure that you have the check mark green whenever you're making changes in the editor.
Okay. So he just replied saying I just deleted a tab widget and Control Z is not bringing it back.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
like try deleting any text widget and just do Control Z?
Okay, so we have the
Not
text.
that one. Can you just drag and drop a new one? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Doing that now.
I think your system is
Uh,
too.
this is really slow. Wow.
Maybe I can share my screen and
Okay,
yeah.
okay, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Right. Just let me quickly refresh so that it brings the changes that you made. I don't want to override them. All right. I have my page. Let me scroll down. and see what's with this undo redo thing. I am adding a new text widget. Okay, this is my text wall widget. I am deleting it and I'm doing command Z and it's back again. So this works. Let's see if it has to do anything with the tab widget. So this is my tab. Right. Okay, so I'm selecting my tab. I am deleting it, doing command Z, and it brings me back again. I think this is working fine. Maybe I think there's a delay on the internet and that might not have been saved on the page. But I think the undo redo is working fine. Uh, Confident, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am. So
Yeah.
I was just taking a look at this question that David also asked when we started the stream. I'm going to highlight it so that everyone can see. It says, what is the best way to suppress or deal with all the undefined stroke null errors in Appsmith when an app first loads and all the fields that show a value are not populated yet? So how do you handle displaying data in widgets that require is particular data that is coming from an API call or a DB query, and then the, the query is still in progress? How do you handle or how do you stop errors from showing up in widgets? So I think one way you can do that is by um, passing default values to widgets. And I think it's possible. I'm just going to try sharing my screen so that I can show you how to do this.
Right, I'll stop sharing my screen.
All right. I hope my computer responds fast this time. Mhm. All right, so you have, I'm going to bring in a list widget. Okay, so that was not highlighted. This is a list widget. All right. So let's say, for instance, we want the data displayed on this list widget to be coming from an API call. And while it loads, we do not want to have errors showing on the widgets. One way you can do that is by passing default values. So I'm just going to quickly show you an example. Say, for instance, we have the get users query. I'm just going to try to display that right here. But before I do that, I'm just going to copy this JSON structure real quick. Okay. And then we can go to bind in the data coming from the um, user. I think it's the user query.
User email query. Yeah.
I'm not getting autocomplete. Name email query. Okay, name email query. That's it. Okay. Uh, I'm having a lot of errors here. I think I might need to. Okay, okay, this is working. All right, so this has an ID, has a name, and has an email. But during the time that this loads up, I would, for example, want to have some default data passed into the widget. For instance, the list widget expects to receive an array of objects. So as a default parameter to the list widget, I can pass in a default I can pass in a default of an array that has one object inside of it. I think something's not right here. All right, yeah, this works now. It was just taking a while to evaluate the expression here. So what is going to go on or what is going to happen here is that whenever the data from the name email query is in a loading state, it is going to fall back to the default array of objects I have right here. And that will get displayed in the list widget. And then when that data comes back, that will get displayed in the place of the default array I'm passing in right here. So passing this default is one really nice way to um, not have your widgets erroring out when the data is loading from an API or a DB query. Yeah, so that's one way to do it.
Yeah, that's a nice hack. Even I have learned something from this session. All right. Let me just read out the next question. I've seen something on identifying the length of the query. Just let me find that. Mm-mm-mm.
Actually,
Not this, not this. Yeah. So we have a question from Alexandros. The question is, can we add a summary or total rows in table widget for numerical fields?
can you highlight that, please?
Uh, yes, I did.
Okay, can we add a summary or total rows in table widget for numerical?
One thing I could suggest is we can use a stats widget and then just show the length of the query. In that way, you can have the total number of rows. And in case if you want to calculate the total of a numerical field, even then you can drag and drop a text widget and then do the operation on top of that.
Yes, I was just thinking how, yeah, you can use the stats widget for that. Say, for example, we have this table widget pulling in data from a query. All you can do, or all you need to do, is read the length of the data displayed here, and you can have that displayed in a text widget or a stats widget for the totals. So I think that makes it really easy.
All right. There's a question from S. It says, can we have some anchors on the page? Did you get that? I mean, what
No,
exactly are anchors here?
I'm not sure what S means here.
All right. Um, can we import an external widget? I think this you can't do it, but you can just simply copy paste widgets on any Appsmith platform, any Appsmith apps. Like you can just select the widget and then copy the widget onto a different app. It also copies the queries that are there that are binded on the widget. Alternatively, you can export or import the entire application and then migrate it onto any organization that you want. Convince,
That's
do you want to add anything to that?
yeah. No. I think that's cool. You
Yeah,
can
maybe
easily
can
copy
you like
widgets over.
copy this table widget onto a different Appsmith app, or maybe like group few widgets and then copy.
My computer is really slow, so probably we can do it
All
using
right,
yours.
all right, all right. I think that's like pretty straightforward. I can share my screen real quick. So this is my Appsmith app. I am going to open my dashboard and then quickly create a new one. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So I'm creating this new app, and then say I'm selecting this tab. I'm grouping like three widgets. I did Control C. You can see this alert saying copied three widgets. You can go back to the other app. You can select build and you can paste this. And just like that, you can import, different widgets onto different apps. And you can also see that the data inside the widgets also get copied, so that you don't need to worry about, breaking your bindings and stuff. But queries, I don't think you can copy them, uh, but you can export the entire app and maybe you can delete the widgets that you don't want. That's a quick hack. But widgets you can definitely copy paste across all your Appsmith apps. All right. What do we have? I see similarity between Retool and Appsmith, but we are open source. That's the cool part.
Yeah, yeah. The, I think David said he saw Lodash used in table one on question one. Yes, so I was just playing around with using Lodash for combining data. So you have table one. What we want to do here is to combine the result of two queries, and you can actually use Lodash. So you have Lodash built in right here into Appsmith. You can use Lodash. And I was just using the union by function. So I have these two queries or these two arrays of data, and I'm going to be joining them on the ID key. That's all Lodash is doing right here. So sometimes it might be really easy for you to use Lodash to perform some of these manipulations, or you can still roll your sleeves and go write some JavaScript to Depends on which is easier for you to do.
Right. There's another question. Maybe import from external sources, not Appsmith. I mean, what exactly do you want to import here? Is my question. Um,
Do you mean
because
import external React components?
that's not possible.
Yeah, I think that could be what your question is. Right now, it's not possible to do that, but I think it's something we would get to. Okay, import external widgets. So
Okay.
that's probably external React components. It's not possible to do that right now, but um, we should be working on something really soon because I think I saw an issue or a question around that on Discord. Someone has also asked um, importing custom React components. So yeah, this is something we would be adding soon. I'm just going to quickly verify the status and send a message on the chat. So I'm just going to quickly.
I can add something to this. We have a recent update to our iframe widget where you can add any HTML code. So in that way, maybe you can add your custom code onto your AppSmith application. All you need to do is you have an option called src doc property on the iframe widget. So after you toggle it, you can directly copy paste any HTML code, and then that shows up on your iframe widget. Or alternatively, you can use iframe widget to embed anything. I mean, any web application on AppSmith. In that way, you can import. I mean, that's a quick hack right now, but definitely we'll be working on something where you can import or build custom widgets on top of AppSmith. All right, I think that's it. Conference, I don't see any new questions.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. It's really uh, great that we had finally hosted our first How Do I X session. And in case if you liked it, just share your feedback on the Discord channel. We are happy to host these kind of sessions again and again. So just let us know your thoughts and let us know your feedback on how the session went. And if this is useful, we'll definitely plan more in the upcoming months. And with that being said, we also have a really cool event next week. Our hero conference will be hosting it with a really cool partner from Cube. So we'll be building a metrics dashboard on the next event. Uh, this is on February 10th. You can find the link on our Discord channel. Conference can you just drop in that link as well here?
Yes, I can do that. So grabbing the link right now.
All right. I think that's it from us now. Just let us know your feedback on Discord. That will be really appreciated. And then, in case if you have any more questions, you can always put that on our chat, and our A4 team will get back to you within a few minutes or max couple of hours and get them solved. And we can also showcase your questions on these kind of events, or just share us your feedback on this, and we'll definitely plan more events like these soon.
All
All
right.
right,
So I just sent the link to the chat. Yeah.
cool. All right, guys, see you. Hope you have a great weekend. That being said, I'm signing off.
All right. Thank you so much, Vihar. So see you guys next week. We have another event next week. So I'm going to catch all of you in the next event coming up next week. Bye bye.
All right, see ya.